everyone, and welcome to another edition of Nick's Impromptu Reviews. I am Nick, and today I'm going to review Power Grid. Now, Power Grid, it's a straight-up Euro-style game. Now, the term Euro-style game is kind of subjective and it's kind of broad. There's really no specific definition of it, but they do have certain characteristics. Euro games have a victory point mechanism. There's a lot of thinking going on. Very little interaction. Not direct attacking. That's not part of a Euro style game. Well, Power Grid is the epitome of a Euro style game. It's not a gateway game, definitely not. It's really on the heavier side of Euro type games. Okay. And I guess you would say it has like a combination of auctioning, area control, train connecting, kind of like Ticket to Ride, and lots of money management. Very thinky game, very heavy, on the heavier side of games, and it's been around for a while, and a lot of people like this game. Do I like it? Let's find out.
Okay, so let me show you the setup of a two-player game, and I'll try to touch as many bases as I can with this, but there is a lot going on, and I might have to sort of skip a few things. But first off, you have a map, okay, and the base game comes with a two-sided map. The first, you have the United States, which we have here, and on the other side it's Germany, okay. And right now I have it on the United States because I'm more familiar with that, okay. And in a two-player game, you're gonna have a bunch of these houses or these house-looking things, and those are the buildings that you're going to power up, okay? And you're also going to start off with $50 each, okay? Now, on the top right here are the power plants. Now, these are the power plants that you're going to need to power up your houses, your cities, okay? And this is the starting setup right here. You have the future market, which is the top row, and then you have the current market, which is the top row, and the future market, which is down here. You can only purchase the ones on the top row, but as you purchase one, everything else gets bumped, and then the lowest future market goes up and ready to purchase, okay? Right, and I'll show you that later. But these are the power plants that you'll need to power up your buildings. Okay, now at the start, this is always going to be the setup. You're always going to have power plants 3 through 10 in this particular order right here. Also, you're going to have a deck of cards that of power plants that you're going to draw as we purchase those. Now, the top one is always going to be number 13, okay, which is air power, and it requires no sources. If you notice, everything else requires sources to power up, but this one doesn't. But that's always going to be the top one, okay? Also, on the bottom of this deck, you're going to have the Step 3 card. Now this one triggers Step 3, which I'll explain later. Now these are the sources. Now these resources are required to power up your power plants, which in turn power up your buildings of the cities. Okay, so you will need these sources in order to power up your cities ultimately. Okay, now let's look at a power plant. Let me just take this 7 one right here. Okay, as you can see, it has 3 oil barrels and has 2 on the house section. So that means that this power plant requires 3 oil to power up 2 cities. Okay, so let's look at the sources right now. Okay, now the oil is the black one, which is what that number 7 needed. The brown are the coal, the yellow is the garbage, and the red is uranium. Now this is the beginning setup, and as you notice, we will be filling them up from right to left, okay? And in the upper right hand corner of each of these sources, these sources squares, you have a value. Okay, you have 1, 2, 3, and that's the cost to buy each source. So as you notice, the more sources you have, the cheaper it is. Okay, Economics 101, supply and demand, right? So right now, coal is very cheap because you can buy the first 3 at 1, the second 3 at 2. Oil's not too bad. You start off at 3 each, but right now garbage is 7 each, and uranium is 14 and 16 each. Okay, so right now it's really expensive to get garbage and uranium, but as you play the game more and you get you upgrade your power stations, you'll notice that these garbage, they'll replenish farther, and at the end you'll see that it's a lot cheaper, while coal and oil, which a lot of players tend to buy at the beginning, they'll start getting scarcer and they will cost more. So you gotta sort of judge the market to see what kind of power plants would be more economically feasible for you. Okay, now let's take a closer look at the map. As you can see, it kind of looks like a Ticket to Ride map with all the connections, but instead of train tracks, you have these power lines connecting these cities. So let's take a look right here. Let's take a look at Cheyenne and Omaha. Okay, so you have these two cities right here, and let's take a look at one city. Now it has a value 10, 15, and 20. So that means that that's how much it costs to build a building over there, and the numbers represent the values depend on what kind of step we're in. So in step 1, it'll cost 10 to build a building there. In step 2, it'll cost 15, and in step 3, it'll cost 20. And okay, let me go over steps a second. The game is broken up into 3 steps, okay, and each step is broken up into several phases, and I'll get into that. But as you can see, step 1, it costs cheaper to buy it in step 1, and then kind of more expensive in step 3. Now also you have a number on this power line. So what that means that, here's what you have to do. When you build a building, okay, and you have to build it to a connecting city, okay, so right now let's say if I want to connect it to Omaha, so it's kind of like a train game, it's going to cost $14 to build another building there. So if you're going to build a building during the building phase, it's okay. Let's say it'll cost. Say you want to build here and here initially. Okay, so it's going to cost 10 to build a building there. It's going to cost 14 to cross, and another 10 to build another building there. So if you want to put, let's say, where am I? Okay, right here. Okay, so if you want to build in Omaha and Cheyenne, okay, it's going to cost 10, that's 20. Plus 14, that's 34. So it's going to cost $34 to build those 2 buildings. Okay, so let me try to go over one turn of or one round of this game. Now, fortunately, each player is provided this handy-dandy cheat sheet, okay, and it tells you the turn order. And so as you can see, you have 1, determine the turn order, 2, buy a power plant, 3, buy raw materials, 4, build a building in your city, and 5 is bureaucracy. Okay, now to determine your turn order, usually the player who's behind goes first, okay, and I'm not going to really go over that too detailed, but just know that it's sort of like the turn order is a good catch-up mechanism. If you're in the lead, you're going to go last pretty much, okay. You'll probably go first in bureaucracy, but let's just for argument's sake, let's just say that the last place player will have the advantage. Okay, so let's go on to step 2, or the second phase, which is buy power plant. Okay, so the first person is going to auction for a power plant. Okay, so they will pick a power plant. So let's say, and remember, they can only pick the the current market, which is the top row. Okay, so let's say that the blue player bids for this. Okay, so they'll bid 3. Okay. And, you know, they can pass or they can bid higher at 4. And if they pass, they're out of the round, but they can purchase something else. And in the first round of the game, you have to buy a power plant. But later on, it's just an option, okay? Then there will be some times where you want to save money for sources or buildings, or you're fine with your power plant right now. But in the first turn, you must buy a power plant, okay? So let's say that blue player buys a power plant, the red player will pass on it, so the blue player will pay $3. Okay, so they take their $3 and they will give it to the bank. All right, so now they have that power plant, and you're allowed to have 3 power plants at a time. So if you buy a 4th one, you'll have to get rid of one, and usually it's the least efficient one. Okay, so what happens when power plant is bought, and like I said before, everything else kind of, you know what, let me draw this first. Well, I know it's going to be the 13th because it's already been predetermined, and everything else gets bumped one. So you're always going to have the 4 lowest on top and the 4 highest on the bottom, okay? So now the 7 gets bumped up there. So let's say that red wants to buy that 7, okay? Now if there are more players, they can auction for it, but since there's only 2 players and this person already bought a power plant, red gets it for $7. Okay. All right. And they get that power plant. And again, we flip it. Now this time it's random. Okay, so I have no idea what the next power plant's going to be, and we have an 18 air power that powers up too. So that's pretty nice. And so again, we adjust the market. And there you go. That's how you buy a power plant. Okay, so let's look at phase 3, buy raw materials. Okay, and the raw materials are these sources right here. I guess that's what I should call them, raw materials instead of sources, but oh well. Anyway, so again, player 1, or the person who's trailing will get to buy first. Okay, so that's another advantage. They get to buy first. So let's say blue is the first player, or the one who's going to buy first. They'll buy some sources. So let's see, what do they need? Alright, so they need 2 oil to power up one of the buildings. Okay, so naturally you'd want to buy 2 oil at the cheapest price. So you want to buy these 3 oil. Okay, now here's the thing. Alright, each power plant, they can store up to twice their capacity. Okay, so the capacity is 2 oil right now, so this person has the option to buy 2 more oil and store it. So let's say they do that, since oil is kind of cheap right now. So they'll buy 2 more oil. Okay, so as you notice, 3 of the oil costs 3 and 1 of the oil costs 4, so that's 13. Okay, so there you go. It'll cost 13 to buy that. Okay. Alright, well, let's just say 15. I'm not going to give change for now. I don't want to waste any time. Alright, so now the next person buys sources. So let's say they require 3 oil. And as you can see, whoa, someone bought oil, so it's a little bit more expensive. So let's say this person only buys 3 oil. And if we look at the price, it's going to cost, okay, 4 plus 4 is 8, plus 5, that's going to cost 13 as well. Okay, but it's only for 3, and his power plant requires 3. Okay, so now let's look at phase 4, building. Okay, so now again, the player who's trailing gets to build first. Okay, so there is an advantage for being behind, and I think it's a really good catch-up mechanism. Okay, so on your first building, you can start anywhere on the board. Okay, and like I said, when you build in a city during phase 1, it's going to cost 10, and they all cost the same price, 10, 15, and 20. Okay, so let's say, where should I start? Let's say blue wants to start in San Francisco. Okay, so they'll build right there. It'll cost 10, and right now you can only have one city or one building in a city. But as the phases go along, you'll be able to put more at a higher price. Okay, so let's say they'll build San Francisco, and they also want to build here in LA. So like I said before, that costs 10, and it has to be connecting to the initial city. So that's going to cost 10, and then the connect is going to be 9. So let's see, let's go right here. And oh, what the heck, let's say they want to build over here. Again, you have to connect it like a train, all right? You can't build here and send something over there, okay? So let's say they want to build in Vegas too. All right, so we take another, all right, so let's do the math. Okay, so 3 cities at 10, so that's 30 plus, you know what, I don't think we're gonna be able to afford it. Okay, so anyways, they can't afford that one, but that's how you do it. But let's just say they want to build 2 buildings, and that's $29. And yeah, I have 30, so that's good enough. And they'll be able to build those buildings. Okay, now red will build a building, and let me see. Let me try to illustrate something. Okay, now this is not really what you're going to do at the beginning, but I just want to show something. So let's say that. Let me see. Okay, so let's say that red wants to build right here. Okay, so now, okay, you know what? Let me just put an example. Let me just remove that, and let's say that for whatever reason, they send the red person wants to build over here in San Francisco. Okay, now they can do it two ways, right? They can go up here, build there, and then go right there, but it's going to cost, let me see, 14 plus 9, that is 23. It's going to cost 43, okay? Now, here's the thing. You can't necessarily block people, okay, completely, but you do have to pay the price for connecting. Okay, so you can't build something there. Let's say this person wants to build to San Francisco, so they'll start from here. Now they can't build right there because someone's there, but if they want to build in San Francisco, they have to pay for the 2 connection fees. So that's 9 plus 3 is 12, and 10 is 22. So they're gonna have to pay 22 bucks to build right there. And that's actually a good part of the game because you're never blocked off. I mean, you can, if as long as you have the money to pay for it, heck, you can connect anywhere. Okay, if it was blocked off right here, I can build something over there as long as I pay the connection fees. Okay. Okay, now let's look at the final step of a turn. Okay, so it's bureaucracy. And bureaucracy, there's several things to do in bureaucracy. First, you get money by powering up your buildings. So let's take a look at this. All right, right now, okay, blue has a power plant, and they can spend 2 oil to power up 1 power plant or 1 city. Okay, so they'll spend their 2 oils, it gets discarded, and they're able to power up 1 of their cities. Now, do they have enough cities? Yes, they do. They have 3 cities, so they can power up 1 city. They have the sources. They don't have anything other sources, so they will power up 1 city. And on the flip side of the cheat sheet, you have the values of how much money you get. So if you power 1 city, you get 22. And as you see, the more cities you power up, the more money you get. Not necessarily at a good rate, because look right here, but 19 and 20 houses, there's only a $2 difference. So you got to sort of be efficient, okay? All right, so anyways, you power your cities, and once they do that, so let me see, blue had 1 city, they get $22 from the bank. Now let's see red. Now red is able to power up 3 cities, or 2 cities, but they have to pay 3 oil. So they'll discard their 3, and they have the option not to use it. Maybe they can use it next time, but you know, for now, let's just say that they want to power up, and he's able to power up 2 cities. So let's look at the cheat sheet again. In 2 cities, you get $33. Okay, and you pay them from the bank. All right. Now let's see what else is there. All right. So this is the cleanup state. You're going to take the highest power plant and you're going to put it at the bottom of the deck. Okay, and if you remember, step 3 is on the bottom of the deck. So as the game goes on, you'll have a kind of an idea when step 3 is going to come up, but not necessarily an exact idea. Okay, so you take the highest power plant and then you draw another one and you add it right here, add it accordingly, and you do that for the entire game. Now also, you have to restock the raw materials. Okay, now the raw materials, they stock up at different rates. Okay, now they don't have a cheat sheet for this, but you have to look at the back of the manual. Okay, so in a 2-player game, coal's going to restock 3 at the end of each phase. So let's take 3 coal. Actually, no one bought coal, so it can't be restocked. Oil is going to restock at a rate of 2. So you're going to take 2 oil. You're going to replenish right here. Okay. Garbage is going to refill by 1. And nuclear power is going to refill by 1 as well. Okay. All right. So the marker is set, and you're ready to begin your next turn. Now, as you see, during the different steps, the rates of restock are very different. Okay, so look at that. During step 2 and 3, it actually increases. So that's why how I said garbage is going to be cheaper. And at the beginning, usually not so many people are going to buy uranium, but it's going to replenish at one rate each. And usually uranium, you only require 1 uranium to power up your cities. Okay, now, and that is it. That is how you do 1 turn. Okay, now step 2 is triggered when once one person has 7 cities built. Okay, and that triggers step 2. And step 3 happens when you draw the step 3 card. Okay, and the object of the game is to power up the most cities when the game ends. And the game ends when the 17th house is built. Now, the person who builds the 17th house doesn't necessarily win. The person who powers up the most houses at the end of the game wins. So let's say the person who builds the 17th house, they're only able to power up 15, while another person will power up 16. Well, the person who powered up 16 wins. Okay, and that's the game, and that's kind of a rush job of explaining it, but there is a lot going on. You'll just have to play it yourself, but those are the basics, and that's how this game goes.
Okay, so yeah, that was how you play one round of the game. Now things get very interesting, especially when you reach step 2 and 3, because in step 2, first of all, it'll open up more options because you'll be able to put a second city. There'll be double occupancy, so cities that you were sort of blocked out before, you'll be able to put it, and also they'll drop the lowest power plant, and so your power plants will slightly be better, and things really pick up in step 3 when you have more options for power plants, because you'll be able to choose from 6 of them, and also you'll have a third occupancy. So as the game goes on, it gets more intense and the pace gets a lot faster. Especially during the money phase, when you start thinking about sources, you'll be grabbing different sources. You'll be competing for more times than not, you'll be competing for the same source, and things can get very interesting. And there's a lot of times at the end when the winning person will try to end the game by building their 17th city and getting a power plant that can power up the most cities, and that's when the auctions get very intense. So yeah, this game can really, really be exciting at the end.
Okay, now, like I said before, Power Grid, it's not a gateway game. It's a very heavy Euro-style game, so this is not recommended for non-gamers. You really have to get a few Euro games under your belt, like Puerto Rico or Settlers of Catan or any other type of Euro-style games, because this is pretty heavy. There's a lot of thinking going on. It can get very mathy at the end, but it's a very fun game. Now, it's like I said, it's for experienced gamers. This hits the table with my game group a lot because we absolutely love this game, and you really do have to think of things. You have to think of the auction. You have to think of how much money you have. My friend Michelle, who's part of our game group, she calls this real life the game because he says, hey, after every paycheck, this is what I have to do. I have to think of, I have to pay off my bills and see how much I have at the end to purchase stuff. And yeah, this is pretty much it. This is like I think it's more on the economical side of the game, more of an economy game. But it has a little bit of train connection, like Ticket to Ride, because you have to, connect your power plants have to connect, and if you can't, you have to jump over your opponent's power plants in order to pay, and you have to pay for it, which costs more. And also, the good thing is the source management. You really have to understand, you really have to sort of predict what the market is going to be. Like, for instance, at the beginning, coal will be real cheap, but then it gets less produced in the end game. So maybe trash, which was expensive before, trash and uranium, it will become cheaper in the later rounds. So you sort of got to manage it. And also, you got to understand, like, if you have a coal power plant or a what's the other source? Coal or oil power plant, and everyone else has the same thing, you're going to be competing for those sources, and they're going to be expensive. So there is a lot of thinking going on and a lot of math. But you know what? I like it. Yes, it is on the complex side, but it is very, very fun. Now, if you don't like math, this game might not be for you. It's very you really have to think ahead, and you really have to do a lot of calculations, especially in that end game. You have to find, okay, am I going to have enough money for the resources to buy this? What if they jump here? You really have to. There's a lot of the good players at the end. They'll say, okay, 1 second. They'll take a deep breath and they'll just do some calculations in their head, and that's what this game does. So if you don't like math, you're not going to like this game. But guess what? I like math, so I do like this game. So on a scale from 1 to 10, I will give Power Grid an 8. This game hits my table the most with my game group because we are gamers, and this is a good, meaty Euro-style game. So if you're experienced and you want to try a good Euro-style game with a lot of thinking and a lot of math, this is the game. All right, that is it. Until next time, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.